There is a pattern most men live inside without ever seeing it. It begins quietly, not with an argument or rejection, but with something far more subtle the moment she stops watching him, not with contempt, not with anger, just with the slow, disinterested quiet of someone who has already finished reading a book. He will still be there. She will still answer his texts, but something beneath the surface has changed, and he won't know how to name it. He will feel it only as a gradual coolness, a thinning of attention, a sense that his presence no longer generates the same gravity it once did. And because he doesn't understand what happened, he will do the one thing guaranteed to make it worse. He will try harder. He will become more available, more consistent, more reassuring. He will double down on all the behaviors he was told would build attraction, and in doing so, he will accelerate his own erasure. This is not about cruelty. It is not about women being shallow or fickle. It is about a law older than language, embedded so deeply in the structure of desire that even the most self-aware among us stumble over it. Certainty kills attraction. Predictability collapses the very thing it was supposed to secure. The man who makes himself entirely knowable, entirely dependable, entirely safe, forfeits the one quality that sustains feminine desire across time: uncertainty, not chaos, not cruelty, but the irreducible mystery of a man whose inner world cannot be fully mapped, whose trajectory cannot be fully predicted, whose attention cannot be taken for granted. Schopenhauer understood this long before dating apps and attachment theory gave us softer words for it. He saw romantic love not as a poetic transcendence, but as a biological script written by the will to life. This blind, unconscious force moves through us, using desire to ensure reproduction while disguising its machinery as personal choice. In his view, what we call love is rarely about the other person at all. It is the will using emotional intensity to bind two people together long enough to create offspring. And once that intensity fades, once the illusion of irreplaceability dissolves, it will withdraw its investment. The person remains, but the feeling does not. What looked like eternal devotion returns to a temporary evolutionary machinery. And the man who fails to see this, who mistakes the fever of early attraction for a stable foundation he can build predictability upon, has already lost the game. You were told that consistency builds trust, that reliability demonstrates love, but showing up every day, being present, being available, and being emotionally transparent would deepen the bond and secure her affection. And in one sense, this is true. Consistency does build a certain kind of trust, but trust and desire are not the same currency. A man can be trusted and still be sexually invisible. He can be kind, dependable, emotionally available, and still provoke nothing, no longing, no tension, no pull. Because desire does not obey the logic of fairness or virtue. It obeys the logic of scarcity, stress, and the unknown. Let me show you how this happens. A man meets a woman. In the beginning, there is uncertainty on both sides. He is new. His patterns are not yet visible. His attention is not yet guaranteed. She does not know if they will text back, if they plan, if they are interested in someone else, if they will pursue or withdraw. This uncertainty generates tension, and tension generates arousal. She thinks about him between interactions. She wonders. She projects. She fills the gaps in her knowledge with imagination. And in that imaginative space, he becomes larger than he actually is. This is the golden window, the phase in which his value is highest, not because of what he has done, but because of what remains unknown. But then something shifts. He decides he wants her. He decides to show her how much. He starts texting more frequently. He replies faster. He initiates every conversation. He plans every date. He makes himself available at all hours. He removes all ambiguity about his interest, his availability, and his intentions. He does this because he believes it demonstrates value. He believes it builds security. He believes it shows her that he is not like other men, that he is serious, that he is present, that he will not play games. And in doing so, he removes the very structure that was holding her attention in place. Now she knows. She knows he will always text back. She knows he will always make time. She knows his routines, his availability, his emotional range, his insecurities, and his need for reassurance. He has become legible. He has become predictable. And predictability, in the grammar of desire, is identical to replaceability. If she can predict his responses, his availability, his emotional reactions, then his presence offers no discovery. There is nothing left to wonder about. The book has been read. the map has been completed. And because human attention is inherently drawn toward the unresolved, the uncertain, the mysterious, her focus begins to drift. She will not announce this. She will not even be fully conscious of it, but you will feel it. Her texts will take longer. Her enthusiasm will flatten. Sex will become less frequent, more routine, more obligatory. She will start mentioning other men in passing, not to provoke jealousy, but because they now occupy mental space you once held. You will notice that she lights up more when talking to strangers, when fielding attention from men who have not yet collapsed into total transparency. And you will not understand it. You will think, did everything right. I was honest. I was consistent. I was there. How did this happen? It happened because you misunderstood the architecture of attraction. You thought it was built on constancy. It is not. It is built on variability, on unpredictability, on the ever-present possibility that you might withdraw, might choose otherwise, might have a life and a mission and an inner world that does not orbit her validation. The moment you made yourself fully available, fully knowable, fully committed without condition, you became a fixed point in her universe, and fixed points do not generate desire. They generate comfort, perhaps, gratitude maybe, but not hunger, not longing, not the raw, involuntary pull that makes a woman pursue, wonder, wait, and choose you again and again, even when easier options are available. I work with men who come to me confused. They describe relationships that started with intensity and ended in slow, inexplicable coldness. They tell me about women who once pursued them, called them, planned around them, and now barely respond to their texts. And when I ask what changed, they say, nothing. I kept doing the same things. I kept showing up. I kept being consistent. And that precisely is the problem. They kept being consistent in a game where consistency equals death. They turned themselves into appliances always on, always reliable, always there, and then wondered why no one felt passion for a microwave. Schopenhauer would say this is the will withdrawing its energy once the game is won. Once a woman is certain of your availability, the biological imperative that drove her interest relaxes, the urgency dissolves. The will to life no longer needs to flood her nervous system with dopamine every time you appear, because you are no longer scarce. You are no longer a question. You are an answer. And answers, in the economy of attention, are worthless. This does not mean you should be cruel. It does not mean you should play games, manipulate, withdraw affection arbitrarily, or adopt the hollow performance of indifference that insecure men mistake for power. It means you must remain, at your core, genuinely unpredictable, not through strategy, but through substance. A man who has a mission beyond the relationship, who has standards he will not compromise, who has boundaries he will not negotiate, who has an internal life that does not require her validation, is naturally unpredictable. Not because he's performing mastery, but because his attention is genuinely divided, because there are things he cares about more than her approval, because he is willing to lose her if the cost of keeping her is his self-respect. This is what modern men have forgotten. They have been taught that love is about merging, about transparency, about making themselves fully known and fully available. They have been taught that withholding anything is emotional abuse, that boundaries are coldness, and that a man who does not prioritize his partner above all else is selfish. And so they hollow themselves out. They abandon their hobbies, their routines, their friendships, their missions, their standards. They make her the center of their emotional universe, and in doing so, they become the kind of man she cannot desire, not because she is cruel, but because desire does not work that way. Let me be clear, she does not owe you desire. She does not owe you arousal. She does not owe you attraction simply because you have been kind, consistent, or available. These things may make you a good person. They do not make you sexually compelling. And if you are waiting for the world to reward your virtue with her hunger, you are going to wait a very long time. Because attraction is not a moral reward system, it is an autonomic response to perceived value, scarcity, and unpredictability. And the moment you become too available, too eager, too transparent, you signal low value. Not because you are low value, but because you are behaving as though you have no other options, no other priorities, no other life. Schopenhauer believed that suffering is intrinsic to desire, that to want is to suffer, because wanting implies lack, and lack implies pain. And so the man who builds his emotional stability on a woman's approval has built his house on a foundation of suffering. Because her approval will always be conditional, It will always be contingent on factors he cannot fully control: her mood, her cycle, her past trauma, her present circumstances, the presence of higher value men, the invisible algorithms of her unconscious. And the more he needs her approval, the more transparent his need becomes, and the more her desire withdraws. It is a feedback loop of scarcity and neediness disguised as love. This is why the man she later pursued after you, after the breakup, after the slow fade, often looks similar to you on paper. Similar job, similar background, but there is one crucial difference. He did not need her. He did not rearrange his life to accommodate her. He did not text back immediately. He did not drop his plans when she called. He did not make her the center of his emotional world. And because of that, she could not predict him. She could not map him. She could not take his attention for granted. And so she pursued, she wondered, she invested. Not because he was better than you in any objective sense, but because he was uncertain. And uncertainty, in the architecture of desire, is the only renewable resource. Now zoom out. This is not just about individual men making individual mistakes. This is about a systemic collapse in masculine understanding. We live in a culture that has spent the last several decades teaching men that their instincts are toxic, that their boundaries are violence, and that their independence is abandonment. Men are being taught to apologize for their presence, to soften their opinions, to defer to female emotion as the ultimate arbiter of reality. And in that environment, an entire generation of men has learned to make themselves smaller, quieter, more accommodating, more predictable. They have learned to manage their own personalities to avoid conflict, rejection, and being labeled as difficult, dangerous, or emotionally unavailable. And the result is an epidemic of sexless relationships, dead bedrooms, men who describe feeling like roommates with their girlfriends or wives, women who describe feeling repulsed by partners they once desired. The pattern is everywhere. The man becomes predictable. His schedule becomes predictable. His reactions become predictable. His presence becomes predictable. And predictability breeds contempt, or worse, indifference. She does not hate him. She simply stops seeing him. He becomes furniture, part of the environment. And when the relationship finally ends, when she finally leaves or cheats or simply goes cold, he is blindsided. He genuinely does not understand what happened. He did everything right according to the script he was given, and that is precisely why he lost. Schopenhauer would say the script itself is the problem. That romantic love is always a lie. The will tells us to keep us reproducing, and the man who believes the lie, who builds his identity around being loved, being chosen, being desired, has already surrendered his sovereignty. He has made himself hostage to forces he cannot control, and those forces will betray him the moment his utility expires. The only escape is to see through the illusion, to stop deriving your sense of self from her gaze, to stop negotiating with her moods, to stop performing predictability in the hope that it will buy you security, because it will not. It'll buy you contempt disguised as comfort, and one day you will wake up in a relationship that feels like a slow death, wondering how you got there. The practical question then is this: how does a man live in a way that does not collapse into predictability? How does he maintain the mystery, the tension, the unpredictability that sustains desire, without becoming a performer or a manipulator? The answer is simpler than you think, but harder than you want it to be. You must have a life that does not require her presence to function. You must have a mission that matters more to you than her approval. You must have standards you are willing to enforce, even if that means losing her. You must have boundaries around your time, your attention, your energy, your body, and our future. And you must be willing to walk away from any situation that requires you to abandon those things. Notice when you are changing your schedule to accommodate her without her asking. Notice when you are softening your opinions to avoid conflict. Notice when you are explaining yourself, justifying yourself, seeking her approval for decisions that are yours alone to make. Notice when you are texting her out of anxiety rather than genuine desire to connect. Notice when you are afraid of her reaction, and therefore manage your own behavior to preemptively soothe her. Every time you do this, you are training her to see you as predictable, as manageable, as safe. And safety in this context is the death of desire. Stop pretending that overcommunication is intimacy. Most of what men call emotional availability is actually emotional incontinence, an inability to sit with uncertainty, to hold their own tension, to let silence exist without filling it. Learn to let hours pass without contact. Let her wonder. Let her reach out. Let her experience your absence as a presence, rather than your presence as a constant foreground noise she has learned to ignore. Refuse to apologize for things you do not believe you did wrong. This does not mean refuse to apologize ever. It means refusing to apologize as a conflict avoidance strategy. If you were genuinely wrong, own it clearly and briefly, then move on. If you were not wrong, do not negotiate, do not explain, do not seek her forgiveness for crimes you did not commit. Her discomfort with your boundary is not your responsibility to manage. Let her feel it, let her sit with it, let her decide if she can tolerate a man who will not fold. Allow her to react without absorbing her emotion as your emergency. This is critical. Most men are so terrified of female disapproval that they treat her bad mood, her disappointment, her anger as a crisis they must immediately resolve. And in doing so, they teach her that emotional outbursts are an effective means of control. When she is upset, let her be upset. Be calm, be present if she asks. But do not scramble, do not placate, do not abandon your own position to restore her comfort. This is not coldness, this is sovereignty. Begin to move as if your mission is more important than the relationship, not because you do not care about her, but because a man without a mission is a man without desire. Women do not want to be your mission. They want to be pursued by a man who has one. If she is the most important thing in your life, you are already lost. She will feel the weight of that responsibility and resent you for it. But if she is important within the context of a life that has direction, purpose, and standards independent of her, then her presence becomes a choice rather than a need, and choice is the only foundation for sustained desire. Here is the split in the road. You are standing at it now whether you see it or not. In one direction is the path you have been walking, the path of accommodation, consistency, emotional availability, without boundaries, predictability disguised as love. If you keep walking that path, I can tell you exactly where it leads. In 5 years, you will be smaller, more bitter, more confused. You will have a job you tolerate, a relationship that feels like a negotiation, a body you have stopped caring for, and the quiet, constant hum of resentment you cannot name. You will look at other men who seem to generate attraction without effort enough. You will tell yourself they are lucky, or cruel, or that women are broken. But the truth is simpler. They did not make themselves predictable. They did not abandon their mission. They did not collapse into transparency. And you did. The other path is harder. It is lonelier at first. It requires you to stop performing, to stop seeking approval, to stop managing her emotions, to stop making her the center of your world. It requires you to build something, a body, a skill, a business, a craft, a purpose that matters to you, independent of her presence. It requires you to enforce boundaries that will make some women leave. It requires you to accept that not every relationship is meant to last, and that clinging to a dying thing out of fear is not love, it is cowardice. But if you walk that path, in 5 years you will be different. Quieter, maybe, fewer friends perhaps, but stronger, clearer, more respected. The people still in your life will be there because they chose you, not because you made yourself indispensable through neediness. And the women in your life will desire you not because you performed mystery, but because you are genuinely unpredictable, because your attention is scarce, your mission is real, your presence is a choice, not a guarantee. Schopenhauer was not interested in making men happy. He was interested in making them awake, and waking up means seeing that the scripts you were given do not work, that the woman you are trying to please is not the enemy you are. Your need for her approval is the enemy. Your willingness to abandon yourself to keep her is the enemy. Your belief that predictability equals love is the enemy. And until you confront that, until you stop blaming her coldness and start examining your own collapse, nothing will change. Let me say this as clearly as I can. The moment you became predictable, her desire began to die, not because she is shallow, not because she is cruel, but because desire requires uncertainty. You removed all uncertainty from the equation. You made yourself fully available, fully knowable, fully guaranteed, and in doing so, you made yourself irrelevant. This is not a moral judgment. It is a mechanical description. If you desire to return hers or anyone else's, you must become unpredictable again, not through games, not through strategy, but through substance, through mission, through boundaries, through the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you will survive without her, and that your life has meaning whether she stays or goes. She does not kill your desire. She reflects its absence. If you have become predictable, it is because you had nothing else to be, no mission to pursue, no standard to enforce, no inner world that demanded protection, and the woman in front of you, whether she knows it or not, is simply showing you what you have already done to yourself. If this hit something in you, if you felt the weight of recognition somewhere in your chest, then do not let it disappear. Share this with the men in your life who need it. Subscribe to keep this work alive, and understand that what you just heard is not entertainment. It is a mirror. The question is whether you are willing to look at what it shows you. You will either become the kind of man whose presence generates tension, mystery, and respect, or you will become the kind of man women tolerate until something better arrives. The choice has always been yours. The question is whether you are finally ready to make it.